Hi, my name is Joseph Cruz. I'm currently a senior here, University of Houston downtown. A little bit about myself before I begin my presentation. I am a 8-year veteran with the Houston Police Department, currently assigned to the Southwestern Gang Divisional Tactical Unit. Um, Basically, what my job is to proactively detect, deter, and pretty much control a lot of the gang crime, especially in Southwest Houston where I work. Streets like Bel Air, Fondren, Bel Air, Renwick, Rampart, Sandpiper, West Belford, South Braeswood, South Gessner, that part of town. Um, I work with a team of officers where when I say proactively, we do surveillance, we do undercover operations, we do, we pretty much go after the major or repeat offenders in our areas. Real quick, um, the topic that I'm about to present involves racial disparity in the criminal justice system. Um, right now, as it stands, we have a disparity in the criminal justice system, and real quick before I go into that, I think it's important to note what a disparity is, especially as when we talk about things like race, and automatically people assume, okay, discrimination, it's got to be something about just all about discrimination. Well, not necessarily. Um, Disparity is basically, for example, um, you have two college age students in a room full of senior citizens, you know, and there's obvious disparity there. The disparity is there's more old senior age uh, citizens than there are college age students. So there's more old people than young people in that room. So there's a disparity there, more old versus more new. Um, Basically, the importance of this topic that I'm about to read is, and to kind of get you everybody thinking, is anybody that has gone to school for the most part, not everybody, but anybody for the most part, um, somewhere along the way, somebody helped you get here. Somebody helped you get to graduation day. Um, Somebody helped you um, or told you, hey, you know what, school's important. Um, it's important that you go to school, you get an education, um, graduate from high school so you can go and go to college or get your GED so you can continue your education in college. Or like me, I went to the military 4 years in order for me to pay for my college. So somebody along the way has told you that, and then they've also said, or someone has said to you, the reason why is because you want to be able to make enough money to sustain yourself and maybe hopefully have a family one day. Um, you want to be able to have a house, own property, um, do things that are going to make you successful. Um, and somewhere along the way, that somebody was either your mom, your dad, big sister, big brother, somebody or a whole family was there pushing you or telling you, hey, you know what you're doing with your life, you should be so proud of. And that's so awesome that you're able to go on and actually get a college degree. And for most people in this class that are soon to graduate, you're already hearing that prior to graduate. Um, so real quick, I want to talk about the racial disparity, like I said, and talk about it to an extent where not necessarily where we kind of point fingers and say, well, the reason why there's racial disparity is because of this, that, the other. Well, yeah, we're going to do that, but do it in a way that we look at facts, we look at history. And unfortunately, to do that, we have to look at the discrimination that took place in this country. Now, some people may say, "Oh, here we go, discrimination." Another reason uh, for people doing or giving people the excuse to do what they want to do, which is it's a very short-sighted um, reason to say at any time. I can tell you, and the reason why I say short-sighted is because every individual makes a decision. Yes, every individual makes a decision to commit crime. Yes, but what got them there? What led them to that decision? How did they get there? And working in law enforcement, I can tell you that not everybody grew up the way I did. Not everybody grew up the way you did. Not everybody had uh, access to good schools. Not everybody had those job opportunities after college. Much less did they get the opportunity to go to college. Not everybody lived in a good area. And if you lived in a bad area, consider yourself extraordinary. I mean, if you made it out of or made it out of a rough area, consider yourself like one of the few that actually do that. And it's a very, very commendable job on your part. And not everybody had their mom, not everybody had their dad in their home. So when we talk about racial disparity, we need to talk about those four pillars, which is education, job opportunities, geography, and family relationships. And that's what we're going to talk. That's what I'm going to talk about in my paper, and I'm going to go into more detail. And as I go into more detail, I focus on three important parts of U.S. history. Those three important parts, unfortunately, include times in this country's existence where you should be very proud of it. And I say that with the whole heart because as I did my research and I actually read and did a little reading, it's kind of unfortunate and very, very sad to see some of the things that actually took place during these time periods that I wasn't alive for. You know, um, so as you go through these things, and I go through my topic, my presentation, I just ask you to keep an open mind. You don't have to agree with it. You can say, you know what, you're crazy, man. There's no way that's true. But anyway, um, real quick, slavery, very easy. As I talk about slavery in my paper, as it relates to racial disparity in the criminal justice system, uh, we look at, well, was there any education? Of course not. Most slaves were not given the right to even read or learn how to read. Job opportunities. Slavery is not a job. They didn't get paid to do what they did. Even after that time period, even after slavery was considered to be abolished, uh, many slaves at that time remained slaves because there were no job opportunities for them. Geography. Um, those that lived in the South, well, guess what? No, I don't think there's very many uh, white white people that were going to hire you, nor would they even consider you to be free from slavery at that time. And of course, family relationships. Unfortunately, slavery goes, and as I did more research and I learned, um, families were torn apart. You know, families were not able to stay together, and the few that did, they experienced some pretty traumatic events in their lives, and that can include anything from the males and the females being separated, or the females being abused physically and sexually. And then, of course, how do you sustain a family like that? It's just not normal. Of course, kids, children having to go through that. So then we go to civil rights. I talk about in my paper the education, the job opportunities, the geography, the family relationships, segregation, education as it related to segregation. Um, in the South, well, black students weren't allowed to go to school with white students, and if they did, they were segregated. Um, Job opportunities, you know, um, unfortunately, because of the slavery period, because of their low education that is because of the low education that they or no formal education given to them. Of course, they didn't have any they weren't privy to any type of skilled labor that was going to pay them, and then that continued. That continued even, you know, before World War II, and then we look at geography, in the South, Jim Crow, the laws, the way they were. And we look at family relationships, how they were, how the family relationships during that time existed, and how, at one point during World War II, there were the availability of jobs because of the war effort, especially in California and other major cities across the country. Um, so we saw at that point, while doing my research, you saw an actual promise of an African American family maybe living in California, you know, and them having the ability to provide for themselves, own a house. Businesses were thriving, surviving. You had, African American communities actually sustaining life and actually living the American dream. Well, then after the war effort was done with, um, the jobs were gone, and if you did have a job, it was very difficult to maintain the job because uh, any advancement as far as uh, further pay or increased pay or managerial position wasn't available, uh, due to the fact that not many white men were at that time willing to take orders from a black man. Um, so then after that, you had a breakdown. You had a breakdown in society where now the jobs were going down, no longer allowed to pay for the houses. The businesses in the areas were moving. There was no money, um, and then of course, um, school education got put on the back burner due to the fact that there was no way that mom and dad was going to pay for college, not with them having to work and sustain life. Then that time you had a high police presence, especially in California, the Oakland area, um, and especially the Watts area, where you had a white dominated police force because most white, uh, most officers back then, most of them were white. Not all of them, most were. And the interaction that they had in these communities wasn't very positive, very negative interactions, which led to the Watts riots in particular. So as we go through these time periods and we discuss them in our literature review, we have to take into account and we have to look at those things as being a kind of jumping off point to where we are as an American society. Now you have a particular group now who have no other way to access education. The jobs opportunities aren't there. The geography, the neighborhoods are going down, and then our family relationships begin to crumble. I mean, uh, living in a household where mom or dad's not working is pretty tough. And that's what we discussed in our literature review. As we get to our critical analysis, we start to analyze a lot of these issues and a lot of these problems with theories. And as we get there, we start to talk about a social strain theory. That's what it's been all about thus far. Uh, as far as not having the education, not having the family structure, not having the good neighborhoods, not having the job opportunities. So then we go into other things, but before we get there, we talk about finally, we talk about the war on drug effort. Um, as these as more and more minorities and African American males alike begin to not have the access to those jobs. Well, guess what? They're going to make money the best way they know how. And they chose at that time, many chose to sell drugs. Now, We're selling drugs or narcotics. A lot of this is done um, in neighborhoods, unfortunately, um, where crack cocaine is prevalent now. Most American cities during the 80s, and now the war on drugs is in full effect. Now we have not only did we have President Nixon, we had President Reagan enact these policies that these war on drug policies, where now we're sending um, these offenders to jail for a longer time for a small amount of drugs in order to deter people from using, selling, and any type of drug. So now what do we have again? Once again, we have our education, eh, our school system. Yeah, it may be there, but guess what? Now our kids have to walk to a school where every street corner they're selling drugs, and now there's 20 different gangs and 20 that represent 20 different streets in our neighborhoods, and now they have to or they feel the need or there's a growing propensity to become part of that crime by joining a gang in order to survive because they had to walk in these neighborhoods. They had to somehow fit in with a crowd, fit in with a group, and that's just kind of a way of life in a lot of these uh, disadvantaged parts of town that are plagued with narcotics. So now that you have that, now you have these family relationships breaking down because dad is being given a 15-year sentence for a low or small amount of crack cocaine that was in his possession while he was trying to sell to survive and provide for his family. And a lot of that has to do with what we call differential association theory. Now, I'm throwing a lot of these theories out here in this presentation just to prove and show that during my critical analysis, and as we go more in depth and we talk about them, there's a trend here. And so his dad's gone, and you have little Johnny, little Susie at home. Who's working? Mom's working. Mom's working a low-paying job for a long or sustained period of time. That could be anything from 15 to 16 hours a day. And we fall into what they call a routine activity theory, where this becomes an issue for little Susie and little Johnny who are at home in a high crime area who have friends outside that maybe aren't doing the right thing, and now they fall into that same trap. So as we go and we talk about the war on drugs, we start to expand on the disparities that exist now because of these policies that are set in place. These in-truth sentencing um, type policies, where these three strikes you're out type policies. Now we're incarcerating more folks today than anybody else in the world. Now we have a breakdown in family values. Now education is no longer important because we have to work before we can go to school or feel the need that, you know what, I'd rather go sell narcotics at 15 than go get an education where nobody's paying me. Um, you know, and mom's breaking her back trying to survive. You know, and in this type of society, you can't. In the American way, in the American dream, when you see everybody else living that way, you have no other, I mean, how does one expect to feel? I mean, you have no reason to probably believe that it's because of just outright discrimination when maybe it's not the truth. So racial disparity affects a our criminal justice system now and our arrest rate. And then naturally, of course, show up in court, um, and then on to incarceration. So how do we solve this problem? Well, this time we have Devin Anderson, who's DA Harris County, the District Attorney Harris County, Minister of Justice, who's come up proposed new legislation or new policies within her office that would help um, provide more first-time offenders of narcotics-related arrests with a second chance, so to speak. I go into more of those policies in my paper because I can tell you firsthand, speaking from experience, most of the criminals that we arrest today, um, they they had a narcotics related arrest that led them down the road to and advanced them into more violent crimes. Um, now my disclaimer is this, and those that have contrasting views, yes, everyone's given a choice. Yes, we have there are access, there are education, uh, there are better schools constantly being built in these neighborhoods. Yes, they're being given these same disadvantaged folks are given being provided welfare. Yes, I understand that, but what options do they really have? I mean, are you really given a choice? I mean, when you're born into a family that sees uh, crime as a way of life, um, so my paper talks about that, and hopefully by providing solutions in regards to maybe having or setting up welfare programs in suburban areas where they may have access to better schooling, to better infrastructure, job opportunities is a possible solution. Um, and those are some of the solutions that I provide later on in my paper and in my presentation here. So, of course, I would love to hear any other viewpoints. I'm open, and I would love to hear any feedback in regards to this presentation, include my paper, and hope to have many of you if you read it. Um, thank you, and good night.